In this video, we're going to be reviewing evaluating expressions with variables. There's an example at the bottom of the screen here, 5xy plus 7y, when x is equal to 2 and y is equal to -3. So if we know the values of x and y, we can figure out the value of this expression by substituting for those variables. So let's take a look at some steps. We have another example here. What is 3xy minus 6y plus x when x is equal to 2 and y is equal to -3? Let's take a look at the steps. Carefully replace each variable with the given number for that variable. So in this instance, we're told that x is 2, so we can replace x with 2. And we have another x here. I'll explain why I'm wrapping that in a parenthesis in a moment. Y is equal to -3. And here's another y, -3. So that's effectively our substitution. We could rewrite this whole thing, and we'll go through some examples of doing that in a moment. I suggest wrapping the negative values in parentheses. Actually, wrapping all of the substituted values with parentheses is a good idea. It just helps keep track of those substitutions and avoid mistakes. After that, you want to follow your order of operations rules. In other words, PEMDAS. So where we do the parentheses and then the exponents, then multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. Use your calculator if possible. If you are allowed, you're going to make less mistakes if you do that. Let's take a look at some examples. Here's the first one. 2 times x plus 3 times y minus 4z when x is equal to 3, y is equal to 2, and z is equal to 0. So when I'm rewriting this, I'm going to write it like this. I'm substituting 3 for x, then we have addition. We're multiplying 3 times y, which is 2. And then we're multiplying 4 times z, which is 0. When I'm adding things together like this, I can evaluate each part separately. I'm going to do this multiplication first because that's what PEMDAS tells us to do. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is also 6. And we're subtracting 4 times 0. Well, 4 times 0 is just 0. So we could say we're subtracting 0 or just leave that off. And we're left with 6 plus 6. So the answer to this question would be 12. And this might be an example of a problem where you would be asked to do this without a calculator because the math is pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at another question. X times in parentheses 4xy plus 2y when x is -1 and y is 3. So once again, I am going to rewrite this by doing the substitution. X becomes -1. I put that in a parenthesis. We've got another x here. Still -1. That's going to be multiplied times y, which is 3. And then plus 2 times 3. 2 times y, and y is 3. So after substitution, it looks like this. Now, I would put this into your calculator, but I'm going to do this one kind of manually. We need to do what's in this parenthesis first. That's what PEMDAS tells us. I'm going to leave that -1 at the beginning. 4 times -1 is -4. And -4 times 3 is -12. So this part becomes -12. And then we're going to add what this multiplication gives us, which is 2 times 3, which is 6. So we still have some work to do inside this parenthesis. So I'm going to rewrite that -1 at the beginning. I'm going to evaluate inside this parenthesis. Negative 12 plus 6 is negative 6. Negative 1 times negative 6 is 6. Now, I would suggest that you do that in your calculator and use these problems as a way of practicing that and make sure that you get the number 6. So I'm going to leave that answer up while I move on to the next question. 2a squared plus 3b minus 10. So it's especially important when we substitute for things that are squared, when there's negative numbers involved, that we use parentheses. But in this case, a is positive 3. That's going to be squared plus 3 times b, which is negative 1. And then finally, minus 10. So let me work that down below here. We're going to first square that 3 because exponents come next. That's 9. 2 times 9. I'm going to leave all the rest of it alone for now. We'll do it step by step. Now we can do the multiplication here. 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. And we're adding a negative number, so we can turn that into subtraction. And this remains subtraction at the end. Now, if we were doing this by hand, we might do it one step at a time or two numbers at a time. 18 minus 3 is 15. And we're left with 15 minus 10, which is equal to, I'm going to write that up here, 5. Our answer for that third question is 5. So the last question that I have here is more of a word problem, because sometimes these problems will be presented like this. The cost of renting a car is 32 times D plus 0.12 times M, where D is the number of days and M is the number of miles. What would the cost, what would be the cost of renting for 4 days and 80 miles? So this is not quite as direct, but they're telling us 4 days. So D equals 4. They're telling us 80 miles. So M equals 80. So we want to substitute that into this expression up above, and it's going to be 32 times 4 plus 0.12 times 80. This is definitely the kind that you want to do in your calculator and let the calculator do the work. And the answer to that should be 137.6. And remember that we're dealing with money, so we want to add the cents place here. $137.60 is the answer for that. All right, that's all I have. It's time for you to do some practice on your own.